everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this demo. I'm Nisha Bansil, and I'm teaching a class right now in the studio where we are casting natural forms, and I'm just going to give you a little intro to what we're doing. So, as a class, we've been going outside and gathering things that we're finding around the building and around Corning, and then we are working on translating those forms into glass. So the first thing I'm going to show you is this. This piece comes from the root of a lily. It's a daylily stem, and this was a rubber mold, and then it was cast into a wax. So I'm going to actually show you a little video right now of what that process looks like when we are making a rubber mold, and then what it looks like when the wax is coming out of that. So let me just find a video. And okay. So what you're seeing right now is a rubber mold. The wax was poured in, and then I'm popping it out. And the reason that we use rubber is because the objects that we're working with are so undercut and craggly that we have to be able to have a flexible material to get them out of the mold in one piece. So I'm going to work on setting up these little root ends. So sometimes what happens is things that are really skinny like this don't want to fill with glass. So my thought was that I was going to cast these root parts out of glass before I cast them again. So this little mold that I'm working on right now is of these skinny little root parts, and I'm going to work with glass frit. So this is a crushed up glass. It's not super fine, it's not powder, but I'm just going to like ladle this into my holes, and I'm going to try to make sure. Can everybody see? Can everybody see this? Okay. So I'm just filling up the holes of this mold that I've already made, and glass shrinks. So while it may look like I filled up the holes, I probably have not, because as this glass gets hot and it starts sinking down into them, it's going to lose a lot of volume, about 2/3 of its volume. So I've made a little well in the top of my mold that can hold more material than just the parts that go down. So I'm just filling this up, and that's it. It's like the fastest process of glass you can imagine. But typically, we are also working with a technique called Pâte de Verre, and I want to just show everybody what some of that looks like when you're packing glass. So this is the same consistency of frit, except we're mixing it with gum arabic, and that gum arabic is a binder. So when the frits get sticky, they will hold their own on a vertical wall. So here's a little video of me packing a really large mold, and so what you can see is that I've got this fine frit, and I'm compressing it with this wooden tool, and so it's just pushing it where I want it to be, and it's going to stay there when I fire it because I'm going to fill it with talc. So the next thing that I have to do is make a mold of this root. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of clay. This is going to be the Sprew. A Sprew is like a receptacle for where in this case, the wax or the glass is going to be held as it's melting down into the crevices of the mold. So typically, on a form like this, you would have to make vents at the sort of highest points of all of these roots, because the air, as the mold gets hot, there's air in the bottom, and if the air doesn't have a place to go, it makes a bubble, and then the glass won't fill. The air will keep the glass from filling to the points. But because I'm casting all of my roots separately in this, I'm going to try to get away with not venting my mold by actually attaching the glass to this wax and then melting all of it out at once. And then the plaster that I've poured will hold all of these glass roots, but the wax will melt out. And then I can kind of glue it together with more glass in the kiln. So I'm just making a nice sprue. It's just a pyramid. And then I'm going to put my object in there. One of the dangers is that sometimes the wax or the object will float when you start putting plaster on it. So we have to be kind of careful that it's really stuck down to the board and it's not going to lift off when I start building my plaster mold. So because this is wax, I don't need a mold release or anything else because I'm going to melt this wax out in the steamer that's behind me. And all right, so we're going to start mixing plaster. The mix that we're using is a 50-50 plaster silica. There's no fiberglass or grog or anything on this mold because it's so small, and because I'll end up firing it in like a bowl of talc and sand. So my entire plaster shell will be supported by that shell that I'm making right now. So my amazing assistant Alar is mixing plaster right now, and we are just going to get ready to do this, but I just really want to be cautious because you can see this is a little floppy right now, so like if I start putting weight on it, it might start to sag. And you can see that this form is like really complicated and it's kind of hard, like I don't have a good place to push on it. So I think I may just widen out the clay base. And I'm trying not to clay where the wax is because I want all of that wax in my plaster, but I still need enough of it just to keep it stable. Okay, thank you. Okay, so you might notice I'm not wearing a mask, and the reason I'm not wearing a mask is because I'm not mixing dry plaster silica. So right now when the plaster and silica is wet, it's not bad for my lungs, so that's why I'm not wearing a mask. But I'm just gonna take my plaster and I'm gonna start dripping it on to this mold. And you'll notice I don't have a dam or anything around this mold because I'm gonna hand build it so I get it exactly where I want and I can keep it really, really thin. But first I'm just kind of coating the highest points. A lot of the work that I do in my own studio is at a large scale, so I'll put a clip on in a few minutes of a larger mold that's getting plaster over wax. But as these processes scale, they get like infinitely more complicated because the weights get higher and there's just more surface area to cover, and you want to make sure you get it all. So I'm just scooping up the plaster from my board here. Oops. And just now, I realized that I forgot to put my glass on there. So I guess that might be an experiment for another time. So yeah, just keeping it still. But this form's really complicated, so I have to make sure that I'm getting it all and like not taking the plaster off as I'm working. So you all may see me break a mold live here. So so on and so forth. Everything is almost covered. So I'm going to turn my board now because I can see the side that I'm working on, but I kind of can't see the side that I have not worked on yet. So I'm just kind of flinging my plaster up because there's this big undercut here, and I want to make sure that I'm able to cover, like not covering it. Okay. I like to use my hands when I make plaster and work with plaster because I feel like I just have more control of where I'm putting it. It just helps me, but a lot of people don't like plaster on their hands. It's very drying. Okay. So I'll turn this around so you guys can all see it. So this side's pretty well coated, and now this side is the last bit. I'm just squeezing out any lumps that are in this plaster. And I'm trying to build up a coating that can tolerate having the wax steamed out. I don't want it to be too thick, but I also don't want it to be too thin because the mold will crack when I go to demold it with the steam. Okay. So we're getting there. So now the plaster's like not setting up yet, so I'm gonna wait just a little bit until this plaster gets a little bit harder and can hold the edge of my shape here. But I've basically covered the entire top of it, and now I'm just waiting and seeing if I missed anything, which I did. Okay. All right. You'll see in about 2 or 3 minutes, this is gonna get just like hard enough that it'll hold the edge, and this little guy can continue getting coated. But in the meantime, I'm gonna rinse my hands off, and then I'm gonna show you a video of a little bit more of this process. So just so everybody at home knows, you never want to put plaster down the drain. So we always have a Tupperware bucket filled with water in the sink so that we're washing our hands and our molds and our boards and all that stuff in the bucket instead of on, you know, like down the drain, because then the drain clogs and everybody gets really sad. All right, so I'm just gonna show you a video. Uh-oh, I lost it. I'm going to show you a video of a larger mold being cast. I'm not very good with computers. I'm much better with plaster, so sorry. So here is a video for you. 1 second. All right, and I'm just gonna narrate through this so you can see what I'm doing. So this form is really, really large. This is probably almost 80 inches long. And I made the wax in the same way, and then now I'm plastering over that wax. But you can see that this is probably, I don't know, maybe like almost a 5-gallon bucket of plaster to fill this mold. So when the molds scale up, we have to think about other things than plaster because the plaster silica isn't strong enough to hold up at temperatures. in the kiln and not disintegrate. So larger molds, we use a fiberglass, like the kind of fiberglass that you would use if you were like bondoing the hood of your car from Napa. I like that fiberglass. And it's a sheet, and you just cut it up and kind of paper mache it on the back of the mold, and that gives you enough structure to fire the piece without anything bad happening.
Why not just deliver it into the plaster bucket?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why can't you just dip into the plaster, the mold?
Oh, like just
Just
pick it up
quickly,
and dip it up?
yes.
Because the gravity on the plaster, like the wax kind of wants to reject it. You probably could do it like that, but I guess I was just sort of trained to do it like this, and that's how I do it. I don't know. I think that if you just dipped it, it would be hard to get a very even coat on all of the parts. So by doing it like this, I have a lot of control of where I can put my plaster. I like the experiment though of dipping it, so perhaps we'll have to do some more tests on that. I'm curious if the person who asked the question has done this.
I would say probably no.
Okay. But yeah, you guys, like you can see, I have a lot of control where this is going, and I don't want to just make like a thick middle with thin, tiny little fins on it. So as this plaster's setting up, you can see it's like now it's like before it was almost like liquid, and now I have to really kind of work to get it off of my hand. So now I have this like nice sort of concretey, spready stuff that I can get where I want and make this all nice. So because I'm probably going to have to add more plaster to this mold, I don't want like a super smooth finish on this, because if it's too smooth, the next layer of plaster is not going to have enough tooth to bond to it. So I'm going to just wait a little bit longer, and then I'll start roughing it up and making that just a little bit of a surface that the plaster can be adhering to. Okay. So, oh, I did not mention, I'm working on a piece of plexiglass right now because the plexi is flexible. So when I go to take this mold off of the plexi, I have a little bit of give on the edge of a table, and I won't break the surface of the plaster. If I was trying to just like grab it by the top and pick it up, chances are it would break right here at my sprue. So I don't want that to happen. So you can see I'm kind of roughing up this plaster a little bit. I'm just giving it a little bit of tooth and some things that it'll grab. Doing the same up here. And then this will get another coat on it. I really like to hand build my molds. It makes me feel like I'm, you know, kind of in control of the material in a different way than just pouring it. I also feel like because I work on a larger scale, when molds fail and they're big, it's really spectacular. So on a smaller scale, you know, pouring a mold and having a dam break is less of a problem, but when you're dealing with a huge amount of plaster, it can get really scary. So, and also like horrible to clean up. So, all right, I'm just doing this, and now we are going to pretend that I've done a second coat of plaster on this and I'm ready to demold. So I'm going to rinse my hands off one more time. Okay. Okay, let's do it like this. So, second coat It's amazing. Feels pretty dry. One really great way to test if plaster is ready to try to pop off a board is if it doesn't feel hot anymore. So I'm feeling this and I don't feel any heat. So I think we can attempt to pop this off a board. So I'm just gonna drag it to the edge of a table and I'm gonna flex my plexi just like a tiny bit, and you can see the mold is totally free. So now, I'm just gonna make a little bit of clay so I can stand this thing up to work on it. And now we have to dig out the sprue part of this. So I am gonna grab a tool. This is a nice sharp paintbrush stick. And I'm just gonna start digging this clay out. And I'm being a little careful. You can see that the mold is a really nice thickness. It's about 1/2 inch all the way around it. So that's pretty good. That means it's nice and stable. I'm just gonna work on getting all this stuff out of it now. Okay, so now I have a completely clean mold. The clay sprue is gone and all that's left in here is the wax. So to get the wax out, we have to steam it. And to steam a mold, we are going into this cabinet. We're going into this cabinet. And what this is inside there's a metal pipe with holes drilled in it, and then there's also a hose. And the hose can go right up into my mold and direct the steam to take the wax out. So I'm just gonna put this guy on this hose. Ugh, very stuck. And I've got 2 blocks on there so that my mold isn't like resting on the wax. And I'm just gonna set them up so that I can get in there. I'm gonna close the door. Maybe. Okay, and then just turn the ribbon on. So I'm steaming, and that'll take probably about 15 minutes, but while we're doing that, okay. So I had said earlier that the thing that I'm trying to cast is a daylily, and you just saw the root ball. So daylilies have more than root balls. They also have stems. So actually, here's a daylily stem, and they also have leaves. So I made a bunch of wax leaves from the plant that I was working with, and then we've made a mold of one of those. So I'm going to try to take this apart and then show you how to cast into this. So again, I'm going to just drag this down, maybe on the long side this time, and just crack the mold all the way around. You can see this one has a lot more surface area on the board, so it's harder to remove. So I'm actually kind of giving it a little bit of flex on all of its sides. And then I'm just gonna gently twist. So a really great way to get things off of a board is to sort of twist them off. It breaks the seal. So yeah, and then I'm still stuck. All right, so maybe, okay, so same thing. I got to dig out all this clay. It's going to come out really nice.
How do you coat the leaves with wax?
Oh, okay. So what we've been doing 2 things. We have been taking I don't have a leaf. Actually, wait, I might. have a great leaf. Okay, I don't have a great leaf to demonstrate that, but basically you take the leaf and then you want to get the wax to like not boiling hot, but not tacky. And so the wax is you're gonna just take the leaf and you're gonna dip it into the wax. And then as that wax cools, you can separate it and peel it off of the leaf. Actually, Albert, do you wanna make one of those and then I can show people how they peel? All right, so in moments we will have a wax leaf. Now, if you remember the last one that we did, I had to steam out, and I may have to steam this one out also because I can't quite get to the edges to pull this wax out without, oh, actually maybe I can. Hang on, let's see. Sometimes you can get a nail under it, and if it's not too undercut, you can kind of pop it out of here. But I don't think that that's going to be the case here. And if you look, you can see why the plaster has gone over the edge of the wax. So it's kind of locked it all in there. And so I am going to steam this one, but I'm going to give that one 1 second. Let me pull that one out so you can see the progress. Note, caveat about the steam cabinet, you always want to turn the steam off before you open the door. So I'm turning the steam off. I'm going to wait a second so I don't get all foggy. Okay. All right, so this hasn't been very long, but you can see the wax is just starting to soften. I can kind of move it around now. Not enough time. So I'm going to put both of these in here. This should steam out really, really fast because this leaf is only like 1/16 of an inch thick. So this should be very quick. And for this one, I'm going to use the ribbon as opposed to the little nozzle that goes in there because this is a long, skinny form. So I'm just going to put it on this ribbon and turn the steam back on. The steam cabinet here is really fancy and it's really nice, but if you're doing this at home and you don't have a steam cabinet, what I usually do in my studio is I take a wallpaper steamer, and then I grab a couple of hoses and a piece of plywood with a hole in it, and I just make something that resembles this. I've used dollar store tinfoil trays and kind of glued them together so they fit the size of the thing that I'm working with, and then I put that up on blocks and then have the steam come out. Actually, when I did the big molds, I made a ribbon with a PVC pipe and I just drilled holes in the top of it, so I capped one end of it and then the steam can still come up. So don't be afraid of making wax and molds because you can get it out in your home studios. There's a lot of people that use pressure cookers and they run a nozzle from the top of the pressure cooker up into their mold, or sometimes even just a boiling pot of water on a hot plate, and then you make a tent over it and put the mold on top, and then maybe a heat pad on the back so that you're constantly adding heat to that to get the wax to come out. I guess I also want to talk about this. This is a red wax. Typically, the red wax is used for injection molding, but the reason that I like to use the red wax versus a brown wax is it holds detail in a really sort of special way, and I think because it's so hard and brittle, you can get these really thin surfaces off of it. Oh, okay, so this is a leaf. I don't know what this plant is, unfortunately, but this is a leaf covered in wax. The leaf was dipped into the wax pot, and now if I very gently kind of come at this and separate, so in this case, it looks like the wax was a little bit hot
Yeah.
because it's very thin. Yeah, I think this is going to need another dip.
Okay.
So one more dip. But the temperature of the wax for the leaves is really, really important because when it's too hot, the wax just melts off of the organic material, and when it's too cold, it kind of makes lumps. So it's sort of like a Goldilocks situation where it has to be just right. And I suspect somebody's going to ask why bother making wax off of leaves and why not just make them directly into plaster. And you absolutely can just make them in plaster as well, but especially for a class, I like to show people that there's a lot of different ways to get to the same results, and then whatever works best for your practice and the way that you want to work, you can kind of explore that way. But for me, I like the wax because when the wax comes off the leaf, I can get it warm again and then I can reshape it. So I don't know, for me, I like the wax, but plaster molds off of organic materials work really well also, and as long as you clay up underneath them, it's very possible to make incredible things. So while we're waiting for leaf, I guess I'll talk about this. So this is the third part of this flower. So this is a stem and an open bud. And I cast all of the petals. I made waxes from the petals. These leaves are not cold worked yet, so they're very jagged and sharp. But my thought was that I could make a mold where I set these up as I want them. So I'm gonna set up the flower. Oh, excellent. Okay, so much better. You can see that it's much more red now. Actually, I think our wax is sort of a mixture of red and brown, so this is a funny color. But I'm just gonna like really gently start to peel this wax off of the leaf, and I'm just getting my nail under it and like moving really slow because I don't want to destroy the leaf. So maybe we'll start here. So certain leaves work better than others for this process. This is a soft leaf with a lot of water in it. It is not cooperating.
There weren't many leaves.
That's okay. Anyway, something's happening. Okay. Yeah, something is happening. All right, let's see. Uh-oh. This is sort of like if you were playing Operation. This is the part of Operation where the buzzer keeps going off. Okay, but you can see it's starting to peel apart. And it took the leaf material off of one side and left it on the other. So I'm just being really gentle right now and sort of holding it together. Almost. Okay. So now what? Okay, so I got one side, sort of. Slight break, but you know, things break in nature. So then I gotta get this side off. And I gotta get this side off. Nope. All right, I don't think this side wants to come off. So yeah, no. So this is what happens when the wax is really thin and brittle. It just kind of disintegrates. So typically we're just trying to get one side of the leaf anyway, and I was pretty successful with this one. You'll see that it has a slit in it, so when I go to now make plaster to cast this leaf, I have to hold that slit together with the clay. So I'll make a little bed of clay underneath it and just very gently put it back together. And so, I don't know if you can see the edge of this. It's not even a 32nd of an inch. It's really, really thin. It's kind of crazy, actually, that these stay together. And I mean, it's not that fragile. You know, I could put it under warm water and move it around. So yeah, if I was going to clay this leaf up to make a casting, I have to seal up where this slit is. So I would just kind of come under it really gently and make it one piece again. And now, if I wanted to, I can cast plaster right on the top of this, and generally, actually, oh, do you want to make me like maybe 50 grams of plaster? So the last model that we made, I cast with a sprue and I set it up on the board. Something like this, I would actually just make in my hand. So I just want to cast this top surface of it. That's how these petals were made. They were just cast off of the top surface, and I did them in my hand and then put a little bit of frit in them and put them in the kiln. And so I did these last night to prepare, and what happened in the kiln was, it was a kiln that I haven't used before and I didn't test. So sometimes kilns fire a little different in different places. So what you'll see is the leaves that were in the front of the kiln fired at about 1300 degrees. So they're more together, there's less holes in them. The leaves that were in the back, I think they probably got up to like 1375 or 1380, and the glass is starting to pull away from itself. So that's why some of these have holes in them. It's because the glass got too hot and glass wants to equalize at a 1/4 inch. So this is the glass trying to get to a 1/4 inch because that's just what it wants to do. But when you control the temperature and the temperature stays around 1300 degrees, the glass doesn't get hot enough to be able to pool up and start retracting. So that's what's going on there. And then, yeah, like I said, all of those were cast just in my hand. And the reason I'm doing that instead of building a big clay thing is I don't need extra material to make this thing out of glass. Like the powders itself will be sifted in a really thin layer on top of this mold. So, and as long as I fire them low enough in the right spot in the kiln, they should hold up. And these look really fragile, even the ones with the holes in them. Actually, here, let me find one that's really holy. But I can't, I mean, if I'm pushing on both sides pretty hard, I can't break it. So even though it's really thin, there is still structure. All right, so.
We have a question if there's any release agent on the leaf.
Oh, no. So no release agents on the leaf. That's a really good question. Typically, the rule is that if the object is porous, the material will stick to it. The leaf isn't that porous for the wax or the plaster, so it's pretty possible to take it out. But if I was casting a piece of wood, I would definitely have a release agent on it, because otherwise the mold would lock to the wood and it would be impossible to release unless you burnt the wood out, or in the case of what we're doing in class, we're going to do some pressure washing of rubber molds to really get the texture out. Sometimes I purposefully don't use a mold release on objects that are going to lock because I want to get all of the crevices. So I've done some experiments casting dirt like off of the ground, and so if you just pour rubber onto the ground in a mold box, the mold material will seep down into the dirt, and you know, like it kind of looks like a lock, but actually it's not. And when you take a pressure washer to it, you can really clean that stuff out, and you end up getting these incredible textures because the mold material is like kind of looking for ground. So anyway, all right, I've got this in my hand, and I'm just gonna very gently layer some plaster on there. And you can see the plaster like doesn't necessarily want to stick to the wax. People use hairspray sometimes to make it a little stickier, to give it a little tooth, but I find that I don't really need it, and I like very much to get all of the texture out of the thing that I'm working with, so I try not to clog it with anything. But if I just am kind of conscientious about it, I can get the plaster to stay where I want and just cover all of the front surface of the wax. I'm being a little bit careful because I don't want the wax to go around, or the plaster, sorry, to go around the edge of this. When the plaster goes around the edge of the wax, and this wax is so thin, it'll start to break in a way that might not be nice. So now that I've got one coat on it, I'm just gonna put it down. Oh boy, I'm gonna put it down on a piece of clay because it has a little hanger on there. Okay, so I'm just giving it a little rest there.
Could you just brush it off with like a paintbrush?
You can brush it on. I find my fingers to be more accurate than a brush. Sometimes the brush is bristly and hard and it starts to kind of take it off the surface. So actually, I can show you. This is a really nasty brush. This is the worst brush ever. So I'm gonna clean it a tiny bit. Ideally you do not want to contaminate your plaster with clay, so you don't want to get a bunch of like clay in here, because when this gets hot, the clay is going to do something funny and it's not going to blow up, but it's not going to stay together very happily. So let's just say I was trying to put this on here. You know what? I'll coat this one with the brush and we can see if we like it. So I'm noticing that there's a lot more kind of release on there. Like I'm not getting enough material on there where it's really sticking, but sometimes on a larger model, I will use a brush to do a face coat, and the face coat is what is giving you the detail of your plaster, but it also helps to stabilize the model. So this is actually working pretty well. So I'm just kind of, and remember, this was the worst brush I've ever seen. So if it was a softer brush, I suspect this would be nicer, but maybe this is better. Yeah, and the plaster's pretty liquidy right now. So I'm just coating it. Yeah, I think this works pretty well. I like this. Until I did that. I'm gonna keep going. Let's see if we can build up layers like this. It's pretty good. All right, so right now this plaster layer is very, very thin. I wouldn't be able to take this off yet, but I'm gonna make another little clay plinth for this one so it can set up a little bit. And then I'll get a second coat on this one. Oh, and my steam is probably ready also, so we'll go back over there in a second. You know what, I'm gonna do this one with my hand. I think for me, I'm faster with my hands. I think it's just like, because it's the way that I'm used to working. But I think if you're somebody that's really dexterous with a brush, it might be faster to use a brush, or a larger brush with more bristles. Okay, back on the plinth. All right, I'm gonna rinse my hands off and go look at the steam now. All right, first, turning steam off. I like to think of this as the mold making spa. It's really nice, get a little steamy facial going on when you open the door. It's good for the skin. All right. So, in the cabinet, we can see that the wax is coming out of this mold. It has completely come out of this mold. So this is what this one's looking like right now. Totally empty. You'll see that there's like a little bit of residual wax in here. I might steam it for like another 5 minutes before I packed it, because all of that extra wax in there will boil in the mold when it gets hot, and then it makes like a crusty, nasty surface. So you do want to try to get that out of your molds. And let's see how our leaf did. Oh, amazing. Okay, so the leaf came out pretty good. And you can see there's still a little bit of wax in there, and brushing it has almost no effect, but I am just taking off these little extra bits here. Typically, on a mold like this that I had to steam, now the next step is to clean it and get all this clay out of it so that there's no contamination when we get the glass in there. And yeah, so that's kind of, I think, the whole process. I think you guys have gotten all of the process. So I guess just to finish up, what I'm going to do is show you some examples of finished work made by this process. So I'm just going to start this, and it'll be some images for you. But everything that you're seeing in the slides right now is made exactly like this, with wax, steaming the wax out, packing Pâte de Verre, and then continuing. So I think this should trigger by itself, but it is not. Okay, I'm going to do this. So I'm just going to go through these so people can see. This piece that's up on the screen right now was actually cast solid, so that was done with a slightly different process. I melted chunks of billets in there and got that end. This one was same deal. This piece was the wax that I showed you in the very beginning in that little video clip. This was what ended up coming out of that mold. And I think that might be it. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope you learned something, and I hope everybody makes lots of molds at home.